today.
Of ethnic cleansing started with the U.S. president refusing to obey a Supreme Court order to stop the deportation of U.S. citizens outside of the United States. In one of the most despicable events in United States history, it became known as the Trail of Tears, when as many as 15,000 Native Americans would die in a horrible forced march, 1,200 miles outside of the United States. White Europeans had a huge problem when they came to what became known as the United States, because there were people already here. Native Americans had already lived here, but they were convinced that God had given that land to them as good Christians rather than to these savage Native Americans, in a policy that later became known as Manifest Destiny. Now, different presidents took different approaches to it. George Washington wanted integrations of these Indians into white Christian culture. Thomas Jefferson was more pragmatic. He wanted to sell them goods, U.S. goods, in order to create debt among the Native Americans and then force them to sell the land to pay off that debt. But Andrew Jackson, he just ran on straight up racism. He just wanted them out of the country. You need to remember that at the time, Native Americans were not U.S. citizens. They were considered to be their own nation within the United States. And so in Georgia, a number of white settlers moved into Native American lands and forcibly took it for themselves. The Native Americans fought back by bringing in a case that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court said, you can't do that. You can't forcibly remove these people from their own lands, which is a very bad ruling for a president who wants to forcibly deport all of the Native Americans outside the United States. Andrew Jackson's response to this was famously, John Marshall, the Supreme Court justice, made his decision. Now let him enforce it. And Andrew Jackson just ignored the United States Supreme Court, creating a constitutional crisis. In defiance, Andrew Jackson went to all of these tribes and coerced and forced them to give up their lands, including 5 tribes from the southern United States. And then Andrew Jackson sent his federal agents to the southern United States to round up those Native Americans and force them to march from there to what later became Oklahoma. Sometimes the men were put in shackles on their hands and their feet. The small children and the women were forced to hike in lethal cold and searing heat as malnutrition and disease went through them. Among the Cherokee, 8,000 would die. Among the Choctaw, 4,000. And among the Creek, another 3,000 fighting. And the Trail of Tears became one of the most despicable, disgraceful chapters in United States history, and a testament to what happens when the rule of law is compromised by those men who refuse to follow it. A U.S. campaign of...
It's crazy because they're always talking about the Constitution, the Constitution, the Constitution, the rule, we're a land of laws or whatever. But when the laws go against what they want to do, then they just throw that stuff out the window. When the Constitution says goes against what they want to do, then they throw it out the window without hesitation. It's really crazy to me. And it's like the parallels between this and like the Palestinian situation. And then we got to talk about the Chinese Exclusion Act. And it's history repeating itself, you know? It's the same thing. And it was like, oh, these Native Americans, they're savages. They want the death to all of the white people that has come over here or whatever. All the Europeans, they want them dead or whatever. And it's like, man, this sounds like the same thing that they're saying about the Palestinians right now. And it's like, and it's the exact same situation with the people having the land and then other folks coming in wanting that and wanting them gone, you know? And I don't see how people can't make the connection, because historically when they look back on that stuff and they're like, oh, that was terrible. But then when it's happening now, then they make excuses for it. You know, what do you think they're going to say in the future about this situation related to the Palestinians? They're going to talk about it the same way that they talked about the Trail of Tears. You know, the Chinese Exclusion Act. Let's read some comments. It says, I remember the Trail of Tears from school, but they certainly left out some of the details you included here. Thank you for sharing this American history. Another one, love how people are hearing this story and immediately saying it's nothing like what's happening, yet there must have been enough similarity for them to mention it. Let's read some more comments on this. Are there any more? Eliminate comments. Oh, wait, here we go. Comment says, where are you now? This must be a larger location. What does that mean? Says, I think you're my favorite American. Cheers from Brazil. Another one. What would you like to achieve as a result of this video? Getting people to realize that it's the same thing happening again. Make the connection. Another comment says, love these historical stories. Even if they break my heart, it's important to me to not shy away from the truth of our nation. Another comment, bro, you're just way wrong on this. You may disagree with sitting president and all, but the jump to an accusation of ethnic cleansing is way too far. Okay. What else what are you gonna call it? What else are you calling it? Another comment says, sir, you're a precious treasure for humankind. Thank you for having a conscious. Saludos. Another one, I love your content. Thanks for sharing. God bless and keep you. As someone from Alabama and of Cherokee mixed blood, this is a story I'm familiar with. Thank you for your video. Another one, I love these history videos you post. It's important to understand that both amazing and horrible things have happened in our nation and the world's past. That's the thing, you know. United States, they've done some cool things. They've done some great things historically, but they've also done some horrible things, you know. And it's okay as far as moving forward. You know, you want to celebrate the great things that you did, and you want to correct the horrible ones that you did, you know, and move forward as a better nation. You know, that's all we can do. It's like we're human. We make mistakes, right? But we gotta admit those mistakes that we did. We gotta be truthful to ourselves and say that I messed up so that you can be better in the future. If you can't admit that you did something wrong, then you're gonna keep on doing that thing that you're doing wrong. And it's gonna have those detrimental consequences. Another comment says, these comments are hilarious, guys. If you are the ones drawing a comparison to a particular person who you feel needs defending, it's not the storyteller that's at fault. It's the person you're defending. The fact that a European can instantly draw a parallel is pretty telling, and that person shouldn't be defended, but rather vilified in the discussion. Yeah, if you feel triggered, then you need to look at yourself and examine, why do you feel triggered? What's driving that?